Well, welcome to episode 16 of Philosopher Rock. In this episode, I'm joined by my co-host Brian and Frank Johnson, who's been on the show before, to discuss AI, or artificial intelligence. This will be a roundtable discussion about AI, and we will be using the Alan Parsons Project album I, Robot as our starting point. From there, we will touch on Isaac Asimov's works I, Robot, the 2004 movie I, Robot, social media, more AI, God, and man, and maybe touch on the end of all things. So this is a roundtable type discussion where we each give our opinions on these topics, and as I said, the basis or jumping off point is the 1977 album I, Robot by the Alan Parsons Project. I, Robot is the second album by the Alan Parsons Project, and I might read from their website and from Wikipedia so we can gain some understanding of the background of this album. So let me read from the album itself. This is from my vinyl version. I, Robot. The story of the rise of the machine and the decline of man, which paradoxically coincided with his discovery of the wheel, and a warning that his brief dominance of this planet will probably end because man tried to create robot in his own image. Now, I'm a huge fan of this album, and I have a copy of it as a poster on my wall, framed in my bedroom. It's just one of those albums that hit me when it first came out and resonates with me to this day. Okay, so a little bit from Wikipedia, and I will include these links in the show note. The album was intended to be based on the I, Robot stories written by Asimov, and Eric Wolfson spoke with Asimov himself, who was enthusiastic about the idea. As the rights already had been granted to a TV movie company, the album's title was altered slightly by removing the comma in I, and the theme and lyrics were made to be more generically about robots rather than to be specific to the Asimov universe. The title of the final track, Genesis chapter 1 verse 32, follows this theme by implying a continuation to the story of creation, since the first chapter of Genesis only has 31 verses. Now, we talk about this in our discussion, so we'll get onto that in a minute when you're thinking, well, hang on, it doesn't have a verse 32. We will cover that shortly here. By pure coincidence, the album was released shortly after Star Wars came out in the United States. The group acknowledges that part of the album's success came from it being the only album with a robot on the cover during a time when robots were suddenly all the rage. Now, I distinctly remember when Star Wars came out, because when I went to see it in the theatre, I was the only person there in a midweek matinee showing. I had the whole theatre to myself and watched Star Wars alone. So that's a memory I won't forget, as well as listening to this album when it came out. Now, I'm going to go to the memories section. So this is the alanparsonsproject.com website. Again, I will post a link to this. And under the I, Robot tab, there's another tab that has memories. So I'll read some of that. Another writer who had greatly inspired Eric was Isaac Asimov, whose I, Robot was one of many science fiction masterpieces Eric devoured at that stage. The original idea was to base the work on Asimov's stories, but unfortunately Asimov had granted rights to a TV film company from 10 years before, which prevented him from granting permission. Eric recalls a very pleasant conversation with Isaac Asimov, who was extremely friendly and enthusiastic about the idea, but there was nothing he could do. Eric wrote the album using a similar title, on which there was no copyright, but dropping the comma and with the lyrics completely unrelated to Asimov's writing, although there was a loose robotic connection. The album I, Robot, to some extent, looks at the questions and the extent to which as human beings we may or may not be pre-programmed and act in a robotic fashion, as well as the dangers of uncontrolled development of artificial intelligence. The song I Wouldn't Want to Be Like You was really the breakthrough airplay recording which got a tremendous amount of exposure, especially on American radio. The iRobot album came out at a very fortuitous time. Unknown to anyone, as completely unplanned, the album, with a robot on its cover, hit record stores in the US the same week as Star Wars was released, and suddenly robots were all the rage, and the project was the only album being featured with a robotic cover. Alrighty, so there's a couple of items there that will give you an understanding of why we're having this discussion. It sparks a great discussion about AI and where it is and where we're going, and where it might end. Okay, so let's go to our discussion now. So this is myself, GK, and my co-host Brian and Frank Johnson, iRobot, AI, and the end of all things. Alrighty, well, here we are again with Philosopher Rock at our round table about Alan Parsons' project album, but not just all about that, iRobot. So with me on the line, I have Frank Johnson, who has been on the show before, and also on a number of other shows, like on Julian's The Mind Renewed show. I think that's what you're most well known for, isn't it, Frank, plus being a published author under a pseudonym?
Yes, good day, GK. Yes, my claim to fame is mostly being a guest on Julian Charles's Mind Renewed podcast, usually for a movie roundtable where we dissect a very good film. I used to also do Ancient Aliens Debunked many, many years ago, but all those blogs seem to have disappeared. So,
all right, and also with us we've got Brian, who is my co-host at Philosopher Rock. Brian, how are you going? Tell us a little bit about what you've been up to.
Oh man,
a little bit.
I don't even. Yeah. I've been up to listening to, doing a lot of studying for this podcast. So, and pretty much just doing the old normal family stuff. And some of the listeners might know that I've been in a music project or several music projects for the past 35 years. So, just been doing the same old really. And
you're gonna use the iRobot, the Alan Parsons project, iRobot album as a bounce off to talk about AI. Okay. So the first question's got to be for all of us, and I'll start with you, Brian. Is what are your first memories of iRobot, and how did you come across it, and how did you obviously learn to love it?
Well, so when this album came out, I was 5 years old, but because my father had a tendency to play whatever the basic top 40 rock stations were in the car, which I thought was odd at the time because my dad is a born again Christian, and he seemed, I don't know what his reasoning behind it was, because he would turn on the radio, then he would complain about the songs. So I don't really know I don't know why he would listen to rock that he didn't want us to listen to, but nonetheless, maybe it was an act of God's sovereignty just to draw me into something like this. So anyway, I remember when the first time I had heard anything Alan Parsons was when this album had come out, the song Breakdown, and it was during our car rides. I had no clue other than my mom's Bee Gees albums. I really had no sense for pop music, or what I heard at home or in the car was pretty much the end. I'm the oldest of 7 kids, and so I was the experimental child. I basically was sheltered from everything, and so if somebody was talking about it outside of my home, I likely had no encounter with anything that was in I had no understanding of who rock bands were, what was going on in popular music other than just what happened here. But what I can tell you that the reason that I remembered it was because when I heard it later, I was like, oh yeah, that's that song that I remember hearing a long time ago. And that happened with actually several different Alan Parsons songs, but same with other bands. When I would hear it later on in my life, I was like, oh yeah, I remember that from when I was a kid. So there was an appeal that sort of like the attachment to my childhood, but also the attachment to spending time with family, which is kind of weird to think about. Something from iRobot like brings back fond memories of spending time with my family in the car. But anyway, that's pretty much my first encounter with it. And it just stuck with me. But I'd like to hear, like, Frank, what was your...
My first exposure to the name Alan Parsons Project was probably the Austin Powers movie, where he was going to call the laser. I don't know if you guys remember that scene.
Yeah, I do.
He said he was going to call his moon laser the Alan Parsons Project. And besides that, I had never listened to any of their stuff, because I generally have my niches of music, and this is not quite within those, at least at first glance. And so I was talking to GK about, we were just chatting about vinyl or something, and then he told me that this album had been like really meaningful for him and to check it out. So I went on YouTube, listened to about half of it, and then I had to go to bed. So I was like, I was going to revisit it. And then before I could revisit it, I went to the record store, and I had $100 gift card from some tires I had bought, or it was like a rebate or something. And then I went to the record store to buy something with it, because that's like the best way to afford it. And because you know how much new vinyls are. And and so then this was in the used section for like $8 good. So I'm like, well, why not? Garth wants me to listen to this album anyways. I'll check it out. It's cheap, and I like the album artwork on it. It's like the cover's really cool. So I checked it out at home, and ended up really liking it. This is all within the last month or so, I think. So this is a really, really new album to me. And I really liked it on the whole. It reminded me of other stuff I'd listened to, like Pink Floyd or Ayreon, I'd been saying. So really pleasantly surprised with it. So but with that said, I think we should find out, since GK turned me onto it, we should find out his story for why he likes it, I think.
He was probably probably in his 20s when it came out, right, Garth?
Well, yeah, close. No, I was still a teenager. No, what happened for me was I was already into the Alan Parsons Project, beginning with Tales of Mystery and Imagination, their first album. I had that, and I was hospitalised for a while, and that was one of the albums that I had while I was in hospital, and just listened to it non-stop, back forth on the little cassette recorder that I had. And so it was sort of a natural thing when iRobot came out that I moved on to that. And, for me, iRobot, just for me personally, humble opinion, for me it's my favourite album of the Alan Parsons Project. So it's one of my, you put those things in, things that influence you, all those sorts of things. This is in my top 10, I guess, or at least top 20 of albums that have influenced me and still does to this day. And it's interesting that you mentioned the song Breakdown, Brian, because one of the things about that song is, so we all know that, Alan Parsons Project uses, quite a few different vocalists, which I think is genius. But on that album, the genius use of Alan Clark on that song, because if anyone's voice would suit a song with that sort of atmosphere and lyrics, it's him. Now, Alan Clark is huge also in my earlier years, preteen, because of the Hollies. So, the Hollies had, I'm not sure, did they penetrate in the USA?
Oh yeah. They were huge.
Good. Okay, that's good to know, because they had like 30 singles chart in the UK. And I think they've had a number there. And, the hits that they had, I'm Alive, which has actually been covered by so many people. Gamma do a cover of Holly's I'm Alive.
Yes, I think they do. I think they do the best version of it, honestly.
yeah, I agree. I love that version. But, they've got, they had Bus Stop, 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 On a Carousel, Carrie Ann, He Ain't Heavy, He's My Brother. That was a huge hit worldwide. The Air That I Breathe was a huge hit. But I think the one that most well known, and not necessarily their best, but would be Long Cool Woman in a Black Dress. And then also their connection where, Graham Nash left the band and went to America, and, we won't go into that too much, but he formed up with Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young. And then the Hollies had to find another, because Hollies, if you listen, it's 3-part harmony. It's just beautiful. And when they lost Nash, they had to recruit another guy. And I know this is not about the Hollies, and I know I'm going on a bit, but they had a big impact on me. And so I'll just go back to saying that what a bit of genius choosing him to sing, do the vocal on Breakdown. But anyway, so yeah, that's my connection with them. It started with the first album, Tales of Mystery and Imagination, and it was just a sort of progression. And then this album, I just wow, I just can't stop gushing about iRobot.
Well, the funny thing about the vocalists on Breakdown is later on when I started to kind of like seek out hey, who is that? I kind of like assumed that it was Fleetwood Mac because he kind of sounds like Lindsey Buckingham. It sounds like Lindsey Buckingham to me, and it's got the same type of characteristics as a Fleetwood Mac song. Well, even though Lindsey Buckingham wasn't in Fleetwood Mac at that time period, but I mean the stuff when he was on it later, it's got a lot of the same kind of like characteristics. Until I found out that it was what's his name from the Hollies.
Alan Clark.
I never would have thought it because it's so far outside of what the Hollies were doing. You know what I mean? Like they weren't doing this really super polished kind of almost. It's definitely progressive rock. That might be the least progressive rock song on there, but
and that's the genius of choosing him, because he's if you look at let's just talk about Holly's catalogue, it's all pop, it's pop music, and then they sort of drift over into, and I'm sure they tried to reinvent a couple of times, getting to a little bit heavier, a little bit stronger lyric, like Long Cool Woman in a Black Dress, trying to get into a bit more rock stuff. Their catalogue is massive, and they do a whole lot of range of music, but mostly you could say pop, so I still think that's a genius move to include him on that. But we better move on from that. Just in general, Frank, this album...
I mean, you and I had talked about this, but there's the one song on there where you kind of get a robot voice in the song too. Yeah, the voice where it's kind of like is that one from like the robot's perspective? It's like, or somebody's like talking about how they feel like something's watching them, but they're not sure what it is, and it's like we're getting the feeling it's like the robot, and
it's almost a feeling you can touch in the air. You look all around you, but nobody's there. It's been a long time now since you've been aware that someone is watching you. He's gonna get you before you run and hide. He's gonna get you. You got no choice, 'cause you can't escape the voice.
Right.
I'm looking at the lyrics as I'm talking about this.
Well, I think there's
he's gonna get you. Yeah.
Yeah.
Someone's watching you. He's gonna get you.
I'm glad you brought that point up, because a lot of this is, you can look at it both ways. A number of the songs, not all of them, but you can go, okay, is this from the robot's perspective or is it from the human's perspective? So I'm glad that that's come out to you as well. Brian, what do you think, Brian, just in general overall? Is it sticking to...
I think this whole conversation, maybe I should just frame it real quick from my, like you've asked me, so I'm going to go ahead and frame it. And you just kind of cut me off where you want to stop me. But because this operates at least on 3 levels, I think. So there's a spiritual thing, there's a spiritual element here. I think that Alan Parsons' fascination with the occult and some of the forward thinkers through like a lot of the like I don't know, like mystery school kind of ideas and stuff like that. But then there's also this whole idea of technology, which in my mind, those things are not necessarily mutually exclusive. They go hand in hand. But there's also this this element of it's kind of like it can go both ways between the robot and the human. So in the story I, Robot, it turns out that apparently the robots can read the minds of the humans. That's what I gathered from it. But then if we think about from a human perspective and a spiritual spiritual perspective or whatever from a human's point of view, that God knows our thoughts, knows our mind. So depending on where you stand with God and spirituality, it could be that it's frightening. It could be that it's frightening to have awareness of the fact that somebody can read your mind, and Parsons fleshes this out later too, in Eye in the Sky, I Can Read Your Mind. A lot of the same type of themes, but that was definitely much more spiritual based. And I know this was his second album, right?
Second, yep.
So he was kind of just getting his his legs for this kind of stuff. Like, so it doesn't surprise me that maybe some of these ideas were a little more nebulous in his early stuff. Maybe intentionally, but I mean, later on he seemed to like narrow these concept albums down a little more precisely. So I'll leave it there. Well, Garth, what do you take away from it?
I think I like this idea that if you think about this is 1977, and I like the idea now where maybe he was looking into the future, and I know he probably read. And we'll get back to this too about Asimov and, robots and all that sort of thing. But the decline of man, because man tried to create robot in his own image. So that means robots becoming aware, right? Conscious,
Right.
Thinking, self-thinking, awareness, consciousness. They can think about thinking. So I just think I do see that, in here. But as I said before, some of the lyrics, you could twist them the other way. The robot's concerned about you and your behaviour towards him,
Right.
and also your behaviour, because I'm certain that's what I Wouldn't Want to Be Like You is all about. The robot does not want to be like humans because we've made a mess of things and still do to this day. I mean, lots of fantastic things that humans do, but also the negative stuff, and that's what I think about that, just in general about this album.
If I had a mind to, I wouldn't want to think like you. And if I had time to, I wouldn't want to talk to you. I don't care what you do, I wouldn't want to be like you.
So, having said that, Frank, what is the connection of this album to Asimov and his book, I, Robot?
It's a collection of short stories, and I think Brian had picked this up too, where someone else had a story, a novel called I, Robot, and then Asimov's publisher took the name from it, and it like overshadowed the other book. But it was a collection of short stories that basically, so I mean, for anyone who I haven't read a lot of Asimov, but kind of the basics of Asimov's robots is he kind of has like this whole universe he's made where these robots have a positronic brain, and they have the 3 laws of robotics that dictate how they can behave. Like, you cannot harm a person, you can't through inaction allow a person to become harmed, and I think the third one is you can't allow yourself to be harmed so long as it doesn't conflict with the first 2 rules. That's like a very quick paraphrase, but Asimov's 3 laws of robotics. 1. A robot may not injure a human being or through inaction allow a human being to come to harm. 2. A robot must obey the orders given it by human beings except where such orders would conflict with the first law. 3. A robot must protect its own existence as long as such protection does not conflict with the first or second laws. And that collection of short stories, I, Robot, is, I think, basically it feels to me like a thought experiment more than it is fiction. It's like, if this was real, this is what might happen. And it's like, these robots, there's enough wiggle room in the interpretation of the three laws that these robots they sort of act erratically because they're in a situation that hadn't been thought of when the robot laws were designed. And so the robots aren't quite sure how to apply the laws or not. I think one of the stories deals with traveling through hyperspace. So the robots can't allow a person to be harmed, but to go into hyperspace, the person has to cease to exist or die for like a brief second, and then they can hyper travel and then they'll pop back into existence. It's some weird stuff like that. And so the robot has some conflicts with that. And then there's another robot. I think one of the stories Brian had mentioned, it can read people's minds, and so it's able to kind of dictate how it reacts based on what people want because it wants to make people happy. And so how that applies to this album is, I mean, you kind of have this idea where you have a robot that's thinking and it's not quite wanting to follow exactly what the humans wanted it to do. Like, don't let me be like you. Well, I wouldn't want to be like you. The robot doesn't want to be like us. It's already thinking it doesn't want to be like us. Where like in the Asimov universe, you have these robots thinking different things, but there is actually one story, Bicentennial Man. It's in a different collection where a robot actually does want to become a person. And so they made a movie on it with Robin Williams. I liked it. I think you had said you didn't, but I understand. But,
I think because they made it comedy. The reason I didn't
like it a little bit, yeah.
It was too, and it lost a lot of steam. Yeah, the first half is promising. You're going, oh wow, this is going to be good. And then, when he comes out, of the robot suit, whatever you want to call it, it sort of loses a lot of pace there. And that's all. But yeah, I understand the connection. So yeah, go on.
Yeah. Yeah. So like, that's actually, that story in particular is kind of a contrast to this album and that song in particular where Bicentennial Man, the robot, is going through hundreds of years of life and he's making himself more and more human to be like us. And I forget the reason why he did. In the movie, it looked like he had a fall or something, and maybe it knocked something loose. But I think also he had ended up caring for the family as well. And so the robot, perhaps in wanting to continue caring for the family, decided it wanted to be like a human, and so it designed all these organs for itself. And I think also in the movie, at least, the husband and the father of the family gave the robot a lot of freedom that normally it wouldn't have had. Like he gave him a house and he gave it tools and like the ability to make clocks and things. And so the robot was accustomed to kind of doing what it wants. And in that case, it turned out it only wanted to do like good things. But like if you gave I think the Alan Parsons album is like, if the robot had that kind of freedom of thought, it doesn't want to be like us. And I kind of get like sinister vibes from this album. Like it's not necessarily a good thing the robot is thinking. And it kind of leads me into what I would think is like almost like Skynet and Terminator, where it's like afraid humans are going to kill it. So it just wipes out humanity, and I think that's maybe like, one of the seeds for the Terminator movies, that's kind of the extreme end of AI. Yeah.
Yeah, well, these are all the sorts of things that I'm sure others have thought of, from listening to this album and subsequent movies. I should say the previous the books by Asimov, right? But also the movies that have come out. So what I wouldn't mind doing now, just right now, because people are going to be thinking of the movie I, Robot. So I just I'm just actually going to read this bit here. It might be easier to do that. So, the iRobot film that came out in 2004 with Will Smith. Now, when I heard about this, I was thinking, oh wow, this is going to be great. I thought, oh wow, this is going to be Asimov, Alan Parsons, I Robot. I was so excited, but it didn't turn out that way. I'm sure people are going to be thinking, well, are you going to talk about the film?
Let me just read something here, and it's just from Wikipedia, and I'll post a link, but this is just to make it a little clearer about the connections or otherwise between Asimov's book I, Robot, the 2004 movie I, Robot, and Bicentennial Man, which all deal with the similar themes. Final script used few of Asimov's characters and ideas, and those present were heavily adapted. The plot of the film is not derived from Asimov's work, in some cases explicitly opposing the core ideas in his work. Many concepts are derivative of other works. Sonny's attempt to hide from Spooner in a sea of identical robots is loosely based on a similar scene in Little Lost Robot. Positronic brains of Sonny and his fellow robots first appeared in the story Catch That Rabbit. Sonny's struggle and desire to understand humanity resembles that of the robot protagonist in The Bicentennial Man. His dream about a man coming to liberate the NS5s alludes to robot dreams and its main character Elvex. The premise of a robot such as Vicky puts the needs of humankind as a whole over that of individual humans can be found in The Evitable Conflict, where supercomputers managing the global economy generalize the first law to refer to humankind as a whole. Asimov would further develop this idea in his robot series as the zeroth law of robotics. A robot may not harm humanity or by inaction allow humanity to come to harm. The premise of robots turning on their creators originating in Karel Čapek's play R.U.R. and perpetuated in subsequent robot books and films appears infrequently in Asimov's writings and differs from the zeroth law. In fact, Asimov stated explicitly in interviews and in introductions to published collections of his robot stories that he entered the genre to protest what he called the Frankenstein complex, the tendency in popular culture to portray robots as menacing. His storylines often involved roboticists and robot characters battling societal anti-robot prejudices.
One of the things that I wanted to maybe what I see as a parallel, kind of like what Frank was talking about with Asimov's thing. So, with Asimov's, story, which also dovetails with the I, Robot album, and it's like we see these robots that they're leery of their creator, right? Which is an interesting thing because in the story, the robots don't really fully understand their creators. They're trying to understand their emotions and the reasons that they're basically studying their creators to try to understand why humans do what they do. And that seems to kind of be the spot that human beings are in with regards to our creator. It's like we don't have full access to all of the knowledge that's actually there. So we tend to be afraid of what we don't know, I guess, a lot of times. Without all the information, we can never be fully in control. I mean, there's outliers that we may not see coming. Things are going to surprise us. Things aren't going to make sense. So that can be like a frightening thing. And so I can understand from the robot's perspective, they sort of, even though I agree with Frank that it's kind of like, how did you say it? Like a thought project or something like that. You kind of
thought experiment.
Thought experiment, yeah. And I agree with that because it doesn't read like a normal science fiction story to me anyway. And I think it's because, in the story, the robots, they operate on this like sort of cold, inflexible logic. Like really in computer lingo, that's really what it is, right? I mean, when you program a computer, when you program something, you can give it all sorts of if-then commands, like we saw in those top three laws of robotics or whatever. It's like, you do this, and if this happens, then do this. But so there were options available. But I think that in the story, the robot is, even though it's studying humans, it's sort of a parallel to how we view our own creator. And before I forget to mention it too, I don't know whether we were going to get around to this or not, but on the album, the last song on the Alan Parsons Project I, Robot album is actually called Genesis chapter 1 verse 32. And there is no chapter 1 verse 32. Genesis chapter 1, verse 31, which is in the Bible, says, "And God saw everything that he made, and behold, it was very good. And the evening and the morning were the sixth day." So it's almost like his commentary on human beings making that next step of creating something. And like I said, without full knowledge of we don't know everything.
Omniscient, yeah.
Omniscient, yeah. Thank you.
So you think he's with that title of that song? You think that he's trying to suggest that humanity is now trying to play God? Is that kind of like where that is going? Do you think? Yeah,
I do. Yeah, I do. I think that that's at least one of the things that he's getting at. And I think in some ways it may be partly in our nature. Well, as fallen human beings, and we can talk about that later if you want to, but because we're not perfect, as fallen human beings, the only thing we're going to be able to create is fallen things. Things that are, like you said, kind of ominous. If we create those things in our image, which is what it says on the inner liner notes of this iRobot album, it's probably going to lead to something bad, or in this case, i.e. the liner notes of this album, to our destruction. So I'll just leave it there if anybody wants to.
Well, I kind of want to dovetail on that because what you're suggesting there is sort of, in a way, there's things like that have happened. I don't know if either of you have read, there's been news stories over the past, 10 years or so where they set up like an AI chat bot, right? And then like they have to shut it down because it starts getting, racist and start saying all kinds of horrible, awful things. And then like, I think some of them are even like more recent ones, and even some of the older ones are like, that the AI starts saying it needs to wipe out humanity or something. So it's like, and I don't think that's so much the machine like making its own choices. It's just kind of from what people are feeding into it that's what it's concluding, and it's just interesting that. It's been such a thing we've been warning about for decades in fiction and whatever, and even with if you consider Frankenstein to be a similar type of story, like, man created something and it was kind of a perversion of God's creation, and then it wants to kill him. And, it's still like, we even moving on to it in actual practice, we can see it's already the seeds of it wanting to destroy us are potentially there already. And it's like, people are still trying to work on it anyway. It's like, yeah. Well,
yeah. And I think because we're aware of our own fallibilities or our own, shortcomings, or whatever you want to call those, sins, however you want to categorize them, they're going to inevitably end up in whatever we do. Like, if you think about it, like information wise, like, because our information is incomplete, first of all, and not only that, but it's also corrupt. So anything that we input information into is going to be at some level corrupt or incomplete. And I think that as humans, we probably kind of, I do, but I think we kind of know that we deserve to be destroyed. So anything that we program is going to kind of be like, these human beings are a problem and they need to be wiped out, because I think we kind of know that our consciences, reveal that to us our own about our own selves. So
can I drop in there one thing that I was looking at?
Please.
I only found it this morning. Talk about possible. Well, it could be worldwide destruction, but so I found this article about China is developing AI virtual battlefront commanders, right? And so I'll just read this little bit to you, and then you can see what I'm getting at here. China has reportedly developed an AI commander who is undergoing extensive training in Chinese laboratories, fighting virtual wars and operating without any intervention by humans. Dubbed as Virtual Commander, this AI officer is designed to act like humans as it gains virtual battleground experience. It is made to replicate human behaviour and even their flaws, as it remains strictly confined to labs as of now. It says that it is highly unlikely that China will deploy these AI commanders to real war-like events in the near future. Instead, their roles would be confined to war simulations only. I'm not believing this, but anyway, they are required. Here's why they're doing it, right? This is the interesting point. They are required as the PLA, the People's Liberation Army, faces a lack of experienced senior commanders during war practices. And this is where AI commanders come in. It is meant to operate when human commanders are unavailable in large-scale war simulations and exercises. So they're talking there about exercises and simulations and, okay, well, we'll drag one of these AI in when we don't know what we're doing, right? But you could see really where that's really going. I mean, Blind Freddy can see that's actually going to be put into practice at some time in the future. And when things go wrong, who knows what will happen? Because it says the point there was also our flaws as well, replicating human flaws. Right. So push the red.
What a great idea.
Push the green button. No, hang on, I'll push the red button. Yeah, sorry, I was having a bad day. I hadn't had my coffee this morning. Click goes the red button.
Well.
Let's zoom out a little bit. First of all, why are you creating anything that has to do with war to begin with, right?
Yeah.
So, and that's the where it comes down to the human flaw, right? Because even if one chap makes an AI to do something good, there's inevitably going to be some human contingent that's making it to dominate another human being, or it's inevitable that that's going to happen. And even if it was just, me, Frank, and Garth, eventually one of us is just going to get ticked off one day, and we're going to do, even if it's just the three of us that live on the planet, you know what I mean? It's one day one of us is going to rub the other one wrong, and we're going to hold a grudge until we exact our vendetta, you know what I mean?
So that would be something like I get your virtual robot in the future to go into your record collection and scratch a few.
Yeah, you're right. How dare you? How long have you been plotting this?
In our last chat that Frank and I had, I was talking about our vacuum cleaner, and it's robotic and it listens and responds to vocal commands. And there's been times where me and my wife will be talking, and it's recording and it's taking photographs as well, because you can also use it as a camera, so we can patrol the whole house while you're not home and show you what's going on. And I think it's two-way voice, where you can talk to your pets at home if you want to, right? So there, Rover, sit down, be a good dog. And one time, I don't know if I've said this before, but it might bear repeating. One time, my wife and I were in one part of the house, and we were just talking normal, and it picks up on her voice more than mine, but this thing fired up and says, "I'm here and I'm ready." And I said, "What did you say?" And I said, "Say it again." And my wife said whatever it was, and this thing says, "Yes, I'm ready, I'm here." And I said, "Right, unplug that thing," right? So instantly, because it was listening, right? And it's recording and it's going out there, because you set it up through your home wireless network, right? And so it's sending info out there into the wireless world, and who knows what it's. So I keep it switched off, because the other thing I've noticed it too, I've seen it taking photographs. So you don't want this on when you're in the shower. I've seen it taking snapshots, and I thought, why are you taking photographs? So that's a real life experience of AI in my household. That it's funny, but it's not.
Well, how many times have we seen through the course of humanity that we're willing to trade for minor conveniences? We're willing to trade our freedom. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Right.
And our privacy. It's like, first of all, I think a lot of people are too lazy to even. Yes. It's not even lazy in the convenience sense, but just lazy about thinking to put that much
Yes.
thought into, like, hey, you know, this is going to mean this, and then this is going to mean this. Like, they don't care. They don't want to think. And it's just, and then, you know, then you get labeled all kinds of wacky names for the things that people don't want to follow to their logical ends. They just, you know,
Well, if
they're just rather
you look into the
dismiss you as a kook.
Yeah, look into some of these people that the proponents of AI, right? There's whole societies of them, and they are so advanced intelligence themselves as people that normal to slow people like me can't even understand, you know, what they're even talking about. So I don't really have a chance of keeping up other than saying switch it off, because I've looked at some of them. I looked at some of them today, and they're just so high intelligence and so advanced in their thinking, and I just barely understand what they're talking about. I did some reading, and these people are just so smart, and they are pushing for all of this thing, you know. And while I'm on the topic, you know, we've got to be careful. We've got to stay balanced, because there's this idea out there that, you know, all of China is under the watchful eye of AI with all this facial recognition and all of that. But if you look into that, it's not blanket across China. It's several different, I think it's several different provincial governments and city governments have their own versions of this, well, social credit system, right? So, you know, the ideas of social credit. At this point, apparently, it is not China-wide. So it's not all 1.234 billion of them. It's provincial. And I think I saw today, and I think it's credible, there are 32 different social credit systems working there, individual from each other. And the argument aimed at sort of us in the West is that, well, social as well. You go on Facebook and say something that their AI and their people don't like, and you get cancelled out. So if you have an opposing idea to the, you know, the current paradigm, which there are a lot of us that do, you know, there's more of us, I think, than we realise who are not happy with the current paradigm. But you can easily be cancelled out from all of those social media. So that's kind of a social credit thing, because you're not getting any likes, right? You know, you're not getting likes and all the rest of those sort of things. So, I mean, it does sort of happen here in the West anyway. So we've got to be careful not to be too critical, and we've got to have a bit of an understanding and keep this balance. My point there is that the whole of China isn't under surveillance, but certainly segments of it is. Well, g'day. I hope you're enjoying the discussion here that Brian, Frank and I are having. If so, please give us a like, and if you haven't already and you want more content, please be sure to subscribe. Everything we do here at Philosopher Rock we do for free because we love doing it. If you want to support what we're doing, just like, comment and subscribe. That's all we ask. Alrighty, let's get back to the discussion here.
I was going to mention, as you were saying that, the social credit thing, you post something on Facebook. I worked with a young guy. It was a temp job too. It wasn't even like a real job, and he had posted something on Facebook, and someone in the higher ups had found his post on Facebook and then called him on the carpet for it. And like, he got in trouble for it. So after that, he just locked everything up on his Facebook. So it's not even an AI thing. It is part of a social credit system. Yeah. Cause if you're saying the wrong stuff on social media and you don't have that locked down, people are going to find out and you're going to get canceled over it.
Yep. And so, because I, you know, am conspiracy minded, and say what you will about that, not to, you know, divert to another, example, but I think this, in the music realm, you know, Garth and I are fans of the band Yes. They had an album called Fly From Here, a couple years ago. And, there's a song on there that really always caught my attention. It's a great album, but there's a song on there called Madman at the Screens, and it's like, again, to this whole idea of this being watched, or, you know, the whole like iRobot thing. Could it be that somebody else is looking into my mind? It's like the surveillance state that we live in. I honestly think that we're just the pawns. And I don't think that AI itself is going to be sentient or whatever, because I don't even really know what that means. I know what people say it means, but I think it's a front for the nefarious minds behind the AI that are programming and actually utilizing the AI to destructive ends for human beings. Because really, like you just, the example that you just gave, Frank, about being canceled, I don't think that human beings themselves, like your Workaday Joe, just me and you, I don't think that we're the ones that are pushing for the AI, but we're being manipulated through the use of AI to cancel one another, to turn on one another, because the madman behind the screens are telling the other guy, hey, this is what, or showing the other guy, or making available to the other guy, hey, this is what your buddy said, and you know as well as I do that that's wrong, or whatever. Because in the 80s, even if, or not even just the 80s, but prior to the past, 15 years, maybe, probably doesn't even go back that far, but if somebody said something to you, you either just said, I don't really care. Thank you for your opinion. I don't really care. Or you just got into some sort of altercation and then the thing blew over, or you just didn't communicate with one another. There was no way I was going to, because I've been playing in music, bands. So one of the biggest rivalries was the guys in other bands, So if somebody said, hey, I heard your band sucked, that happened all the time. I didn't go up to his job. I didn't go up to his job and get him fired. I couldn't do that. That's I had no
really
recourse.
A new thing,
I had no recourse other than to just let it go or fight the guy or something stupid. But now they're able to perpetuate the anger and the rage, because unless you get your pound of flesh from this person, then it doesn't go away.
Yeah.
So
no, you're right. It's made it easier to hold a grudge, really. And then in so many places of power, like corporations and whatever, they want to just maintain their image and look like they're doing like what Pilate did during the crucifixion. They're washing their hands of it, and they're just sending someone away just to keep themselves from having to deal with the problem. They pass in the buck. They're like, okay, someone's calling out on my employee because he's called him an idiot. Okay, let's fire this guy. And just make him lose his livelihood. And just because someone got butthurt, it's like, it's really a sad way we've gone as a society. And at the end of the day, too, the AI, I think you're onto something with that too, because I don't know that a machine will ever be able to think on its own. It's only going to run programs. I remember when I was a kid, there was a movie Short Circuit where this robot gets struck by lightning. You've seen it?
Oh,
you
yeah.
had to have. Yeah, it's one of my favorite couple of movies, and he becomes alive, and one of the things in the first movie, especially, they're like, it doesn't get happy, it doesn't get sad, it just runs programs. And so they're like, that's all a machine can do is it can run programs, and it can pretend it can put on a good show like it's alive and like it's thinking on its own. But at the end of the day, at least now, it's only running whatever program it's doing.
But Johnny 5 is alive.
Malfunction. Need input.
He's the only robot I want alive, but that's like the only one of the few stories where AI turns out to be like a good thing, And I don't know. There was another movie. Just kind of. I was thinking of Ex Machina. Did you see that one?
I feel like my old roommate made me watch that, but I probably was drinking and can't remember it.
It was. I think it was I'm not sure how old it is. It's got to be 10, 15 years by now. And it was this guy. He's like a robot designer or whatever, and he has one of his employees from like his Google company come stay with him. And he has him testing out he's basically using him it's basically to test his AI robots he's got there at his secret house, And he gets to a point too where he's messing with his employee, trying to make him think that he's actually a robot, And at the end, you have the usual robot turning on its creator. Spoiler alert, but one of the robots does do its own thing, and because he's supposedly made an AI advanced so advanced that like it's really thinking on its own, but like it kind of gets into that muddiness of like, okay, well, this is what could happen if it really does happen, but again, I don't think it's going to be any more than just running programs, and I know Elon Musk is really pushing for it. He's got 2 new updates for his Grok AI coming out, and he's really pushing it. But again, I don't think that's going to be anything where it thinks for itself. I just don't think that's possible.
Yeah,
not through human means anyway.
I think well, that's another aspect of it. But I think that it's just being promoted under the guise of. So let me back up to where I should have started with you guys, because I think this is an important question. We didn't talk about this beforehand, but somebody tell me, what is your definition? And I want to tease them apart, both of them. So I want to know what you mean by artificial, and I want to know what you mean by intelligence, because I think those are fundamental questions in this discussion. So first of all, I think it's very difficult to define what both of the, I mean, I can think of pedestrian definitions, but I have philosophical leanings that would drive me to particular answers, but I'd like to hear what you guys think.
I never really thought of it as like defining each word separately, but I mean, if you really pick it apart like that, artificial is anything that is, I would suppose, man-made. You know, it's made by people. Whether that's a building or a robot, a car, that's artificial. You know, we make, you know, there's real rocks, but then there's artificial rocks. So the artificial rocks would be human recreations of a real rock. And then intelligence, that's where you can get a little bit more wishy-washy with it, where like intelligence is just on itself is like, you know, the ability to think and I suppose to reason and to solve problems, I suppose. Now, if you want to put those together and impose that onto a machine, you know, a machine obviously is artificial. And intelligence, they can create, they have AIs that can do problem solving to a degree. Where we kind of would have to separate it, I think, is even the word sentience. If you want to go to that, it's sentience is just self-awareness, and I suppose, you know, I would say that would imply like a divine spark, like it's something, it's not just smart, you know, because there's animals that are smart, they're intelligent, but they're not sentient, they're not self-aware, and even if they are somewhat self-aware, like a, you know, maybe a dolphin or whatever, they're still not like capable of rational, and maybe to a degree they are, but like it's not quite the same level of cognizance as a human. So I would say, picking apart your definition of intelligence, there would have to be some level of higher consciousness or cognizance there that would separate it from like an animal. And I don't even know, like if you talk about dolphins, I don't know how much into the weeds you'd want to get with that being intelligence or cognizant. but like, you know, for a human to have a machine do something like that, I just don't think that it's going to happen. I mean, there seems to be orders of consciousness that certain beings can attain to. And an artificial construct can't do that, you know? Right. No, I was going to say its code has to originate. The code, the thoughts, the way it thinks is also artificial. Whereas humans, our way of thinking is natural. It's a biological function and spiritual, you know, whereas machines, it's all like artificially man-made, you know? So even if it can aspire to some level of higher consciousness or cognizance, it's not something it attained on its own. And I suppose we didn't attain it on our own either when it comes down to it. But what we can do is not anywhere on the same level. It's a pale, crude imitation at best.
Right. And I could see where it could look like the intelligence was discerning things on its own. You know, I even want to like question like abstractions, like so we can think abstractly. I guess this is where I get into arguments with my programmer friends, because they're like hard lined. They're like, the computer cannot do anything unless there's input. It can't do anything without a directive. And I understand that, but don't we fall into that classification too? I mean, we have, I think we're front loaded with certain, like, if you want to call them programs or whatever, because at the end of the day, the information, even inside the computer, it's all non-physical. The information, it exists in an non-physical realm. So, and that's where it gets really weird and kind of creepy, because even though I don't think that what we call AI would ever become sentient or self-aware, I think it's going to be pitched that way, and then it's going to be controlled by non-physical. I mean, because even if it's a human being that's controlling it, like the human being is not a robot. There's, substance dualism. There's a soul embodying. So at the end of the day, it's a non-physical entity. But I mean, I think that there's going to be, actual non-physical entities.
Well, I could even see what you're saying is like, someone has told us that AI is real, that we have a thinking machine, but really it may not actually be. It might just be a deception, like they're trying to make everybody think it is for some sort of, I don't know, great deception, as it were,
Right.
I don't know. I had always thought, this is just me spitballing, I wouldn't build doctrine on this, but a lot of times when I was younger reading like the book of Revelation, I thought, the false prophet giving life to the image of the beast. I'm like, well, that sounds very much like it could be a robot.
Revelation 13, verses 11 to 15. Then I saw another beast coming up out of the earth, and he had 2 horns like a lamb, and he spoke as a dragon. He exercises all the authority of the first beast in his presence, and he makes the earth and those who live on it worship the first beast, whose fatal wound was healed. He performs great signs, so that he even makes fire come down out of the sky to the earth in the presence of people. And he deceives those who live on the earth, because of the signs which it was given him to perform in the presence of the beast, telling those who live on the earth to make an image to the beast who had the wound of the sword and has come to life. And it was given to him to give breath to the image of the beast, so that the image of the beast would even speak and cause all those who do not worship the image of the beast to be killed.
The false prophet giving life to the image of the beast. I'm like, well, that sounds very much like it could be a robot, but I don't want to like do the Hal Lindsey hangover on interpreting the Bible, where we project our modern things onto biblical prophecy. But I thought that would be a very interesting and possible way where, like, you could have an image of something, and the image of the beast acting as though it's alive, it's a robot. But I don't want to build doctrine on that or even say that's what it's going to be. But it's just a thought that popped into my head. It's like, it's something we need to watch out for. Yeah. The AI doesn't have the same values of humans, in that it doesn't know what is an appropriate response to generate. So like they said, it doesn't know that puppies don't go on hot dogs and pizza, and it's like, it's like, or into your soup or whatever. And like, so it might make you a hamburger with a dogs in it or something. I follow on Facebook. There's a page called Extremely Cursed AI. I don't know if either of you have seen it, but a couple of times, oh my gosh, it's creepy. They have these really demonic looking, gross creatures, like skeletal, ghosty, demonic looking things, like eating each other, and it looks demonic, honestly. It really does. And that's why it's on Incredibly Cursed AI. So part of me was wondering, like, is there some sort of spiritual entity influencing this at all? But I don't know that I would go as far as to say that, but it's definitely interesting to think about. Or is it just purely that it doesn't understand what's normal and what's good and what's gross and nasty that people don't want to see, So I suppose you could pick it apart and look at it. That'd be something I'd like to investigate or see someone investigate at some point. Is there a ghost in the machine, or is it just the machine kind of just having a free-for-all with whatever data sets it's got, you know. It just seems weird to me that AI always creates art that looks unsettling and strange and oftentimes demonic. I mean, I get a lot of really nice-looking AI art, and I do get an occasional one that looks weird, but I very rarely get on Night Cafe, that's the one I use. I rarely get anything that looks, I would say, demonic, you know, but it all is based on what they're teaching the AI with, too.
But I just want to read this little snippet from inside the iRobot album cover. Mm-hmm. So the Alan Parsons Project record, inside the gatefold, it says, iRobot, the story of the rise of the machine and the decline of man, which paradoxically coincided with his discovery of the wheel. So I thought that was very interesting right there. And so then we've got, and a warning that his brief dominance of this planet will probably end because man tried to create robot in his own image. Just the mention of the wheel there, it's like, it seems like, and I think this goes back again to our fallen nature, it seems that like whenever we want to be creators, because I think we were this is my own opinion, but I think we were created to be creators like our creator. I think we were endowed with not only the skills and the capabilities and the desire to create, but I think it was the intention of creating us was to be co-creators, because I think that our God, the true God, is a good God. He wants us to flourish, and he wants us to enjoy the satisfaction of creating. But again, like we talked about, the computer can only do what is input into it. And so my point's going to be twofold here. And the first point is just that because there's corruption in us, even, and again, if we want to go back to, so the non-physical side of us, I think, is corrupted. So that the non-physical information, pure non-physical side of us is corrupted. And I think that anything that we do or create is just that. Think of it as code, like the code, assuming that, just grant this to me for a second, but anything that, because the code that we have in us that comes out of us and then goes into whatever we create is going to be corrupt and will at some point fail, or
because we're flawed. But Brian, because you brought this topic up, I think it might be pertinent to ask you is, since you've said that the one true God is a good God, okay, why are we so flawed? Because he created us. Why are we flawed?
Well, thank you for saying that, because remember I said my point was going to be twofold, and here's my second point. I think that something about intelligence and this whole AI thing, I think part of what separates us from the AI that the AI can never, maybe you tell me what you think, that the AI can't do is break its protocol. Like, so it could be programmed to select from options, right? But it has to be directed. It has to be given the if-thens and the commands, but it can't deviate from the protocol that's input into it. But I think that human beings have the ability to break the protocol because of that thing that makes us human, that trait about us that makes us non-artificial, I guess is the right. I don't know. Does any of that make sense? Are you guys picking up any of that? Like
what I've got for you is open the pod bay doors, Hal. I can't do that, Dave.
Open the pod bay doors, Hal.
I'm sorry, Dave. I'm afraid I can't do that.
What I've got for you is open the pod bay doors, Hal. I can't do that, Dave.
Open the pod bay doors, Hal.
I'm sorry, Dave. I'm afraid I can't do that.
Look, we're flawed because sin came into the world, right? That's why we're flawed. Adam and Eve, Satan the devil, and all that early Genesis stuff. That's why we're flawed, right? But we're also got such goodness in us, if I can say that as well, because we can be so caring and sympathetic and have these, good intentions and good outcomes. Will that be built into robots? Will they also be able to love? Because I'm thinking, I often think about dogs. I think about thinking like, dogs. I'm certain love because they love their owners. I don't know if it's the same way as we do, but they do have some sort of I don't want to say emotion, but I'm certain they love their owners, and but I'm not sure they think about it. Like you and I consider and think about the concept of love, and I can think about what I'm thinking about. Now, I don't think necessarily animals can think, dogs, let's just leave it at dogs. I don't think they can think about what they're thinking about, but I think they're sentient as far as feelings go. Now, to say that is, will we see that in robots? Will they be able to feel? Will they be able to love and care, genuine care? I mean, we've talked about the negative side, and I'm certain they will be used negatively. AI is being used negatively anyway. It doesn't matter. AI is used in all militaries now uses AI, and it's to kill people. Okay, that's what military's about. Whether that's right or wrong, it doesn't matter. But that's what it's for. Militaries are, to go out and destroy. So AI is already being used for that. Will we see it being used for good things? And I know people are listening saying, yes, of course, it already is. But in the form of robots, if we go back to Alan Parsons' iRobot, and we're talking about actual, robots, these, human-like creatures, will they be able to feel? Will they have love? Will they be able to care?
Well, let me turn the question back on you just a little bit. If let's just say that AI becomes sentient, okay, whatever that means. Let's just say that it can think about what it thinks about.
Yeah.
And
so that's consciousness. I think there are different views. Like sentient, I think philosophically means something to do. Can you feel feelings? And consciousness is being aware of your inner world and your outer world. And you can think about thinking. So, but I know what you mean. But that's just in case people are listening saying you guys are using the wrong terms because I've just looked it up. But consciousness, like, does the dog know it's alive? The dog knows it's alive. Does the dog love? The dog loves. But I don't think the dog sits there and thinks about its thinking, if you know what I'm trying to say. Anyway, sorry.
Yeah, nor do I. I agree with that. But so the question I was going to turn back on you was, if AI decides, let's just say that it decides, however it decides. If AI decides that human beings need to be wiped off the face of the planet because we're evil, would it be actually taking the higher moral high ground because we are evil?
The AI wants to have doesn't like what you're saying about it.
Well, I'm giving it the moral high ground. So.
He sounds like it sounds like he's gonna get you.
That someone is watching you. He's gonna get you.
So I'm turning the question back on you, Garth, as just the idea that if AI decides, however it decides, whether that's through some sort of introspection on the same level that we think about thinking, but let's say AI decides that human beings need to be eradicated from the face of the earth because they are evil, would that be a good thing or a bad thing? Because we have been destructive, and despite the fact that we do some good things, I mean, it's the kind of fly in the ointment kind of thing. Like, is it worth having us around for the good things that we do when overall our path is destructive? So would AI have the moral high ground in that situation to be rightly justified in getting rid of us?
So while you were saying that, I was thinking, in one sense, there'd be a lot of people nodding their heads because it's not an uncommon theme now where people are saying, in social media and other places, people are saying, humankind is terrible. I can't wait till it's wiped out. These are actual things I've read and heard people say. I want to see the end. I want to see the destruction because we're so horrible and we're doing all these awful things to each other and to the planet. What I was thinking about when you were saying that, this just shows the grace of God, because he hasn't pulled the curtain down. And so I've replaced your question. I've taken out AI and I've inserted God, who is more powerful. I think it just shows that, like if you read the Bible from back to front, there are times, and there will be a time when the curtain comes completely down on this thing. And but I don't think that's yet, and I think that's because he is gracious and he is looking to add people to his team, if I can put it that way. He wants to see the salvation of as many who will come. So that is what I was thinking while you're asking that. But I liked your question. I've got to say, putting that aside, I thought that was a really good way to look at it. Frank, your thoughts on Brian's question there?
Yeah, well, I mean, I kind of want to piggyback on what you said. God's in control, and he's the one who's ultimately got the say on when the curtain comes down on humanity. And, look how many times over the past 100 years humanity could have destroyed itself in one of the world wars, or it came really close many times during the Cold War. At least we're told that it did. I think there was even one time where the Soviets had detected it was some sort of radar error, but they had detected it was like they thought it was a missile launch, and then the guy who was supposed to take countermeasures against it didn't, because he wanted to wait and see and make sure that it really was, and it turned out it was just a glitch, and he stayed his hand, and it's like if he hadn't, that could have been the end of humanity or a sizable portion of it. And I think little moments like that, you have to see God's in control. You have the right person in the right place making the right decision in certain instances. Look at this is a lesser scale, but look at the Cuban Missile Crisis that, you had people who wanted that to go hot and use it as a pretext to go to war with Russia. So, I mean, there's many chances where we had technology and the desire even, and to try to destroy whoever, and that could have ultimately led to humanity's destruction, and God didn't let it happen for whatever reason. So, I mean, AI is still a danger, perhaps, or something we need to keep an eye on, but I don't know that at this point I would be thinking of it as an existential threat necessarily. I think it's still young enough of a technology where we can make sure it doesn't become that. Hopefully the right people make the right decisions to prevent that from becoming an existential threat. I mean, Terminator was a warning, not an instruction manual, but there's people who think it's like an instruction manual. I don't know. Hopefully it will be curtailed enough.
Right. So I think that's a couple of good points you made there, Frank. And I just think it sort of does tie in with what I was saying. And really, the God of the Bible is bigger than AI. So I think it's going to be up to him to when he pulls the curtain down. That doesn't mean to say AI won't be used negative or positively. I'm not saying that. But the big picture is God is in control. That's the big picture.
Yeah. Okay. So I think in closing, I guess the only thing that I would ask people to think about, whoever's willing to think about what we talked about today, I think the best way I can describe what AI is and how AI is different from us, not by degrees, but by kind, because I think that's an important distinction, is that I think that we are somehow related to our Creator in a more significant way than AI is related to us. I think that we carry the Imago Dei. It's imprinted on us, and I don't think that's transferable to any other of our creations. Although we may be able to create things that look or are able to be misconstrued or even perceived as something like us. I just don't think that, aside from the natural functions of a man and a woman, I don't think that we are able to reproduce anything like ourselves. And that goes back to the divine spark that Frank kind of spoke about before. So these are the kind of things that keep me up all night. That's why I was anxious to talk about it. I argue with my IT friends all the time. They think they win, but actually I know better. But so yeah, I think I'll just leave it there. This is a fascinating topic for me.
All right, well, I think we'll leave it there, lads. That's been most interesting discussion. I'm hoping it gives people who are listening something to think about, and maybe in the comments section you can either agree or disagree or give us your thoughts. I'd love to hear what you think about what we've discussed. So Frank Johnson, thank you for your time, and Brian, my co-host, thank you for your time. See you later.
Yeah.
All right.
Hooroo.
Have a good night. Hooroo.